Hello everyone, welcome to our group debate. Today we are talking about a very interesting topic, how learning two languages affects the brain and our behavior. We will use the idioms from the article by Albert Costa and Nuria Sebastian Gales and other important authors. Ruth and Carol will defend how the brain adapts to two languages from birth. On the other side, Anai and Jenny will discuss the challenge and how a second language affects the first one. Finally, Joanna will give us the conclusions. Let's start. Ruth, what happens with babies who grow up with two languages?
Hi Karen. Well, Costa and Sebastian Gales explained that humans are amazing and at birth babies can differentiate two languages if they sound very different. And at the 4 or 5 month, they can even tell apart similar languages like Spanish and Italian. And this supports the dual system theory. Authors like Hennessy and Michel say that children have two different systems from the start and use them depending on the situation, so they don't get confused.
I see your point, Ruth, but let's look at the unitary system theory by Boltra and Disner. They say baby go through the three states. First, they have just on a big vocabulary system mixed with words from both language, and that's why they mix them. In the second stage, they separate the words but use the same grammar rules for both language. And it is only in the third stage that they completely separate the two codes. So at the beginning, everything is in one single place, and which is a big challenge.
That's true, Anai. But the unitary theory has a problem. It cannot explain how bilinguals mix language in a sentence so perfectly. To explain this, Ojaimen and Whittaker proposed the tripartite system theory. They say the brain stores what is common in one place and what is different in separate systems. However, today, the most accepted idea is Michel Paradis' subsystem hypothesis. He says the brain has one big language system, but each language is a smaller subsystem inside it because it's just one extended size system. The bilingual brain doesn't have an extra heavy burden compared to a monolingual one.
Excellent information, Carol. Now let's move to adults. What happens when someone learns a second language later in life, like successive bilinguals?
Well, there is a bilingual effect. When the first language studies show that bilingual adults sometimes perform differently in their native language compared to monolinguals. Why? First, because they use their first language less often. Second, because there is a transfer or interference from the second language to the first. And third, because managing two languages during speech requires a lot of control, which can make their speech rate a bit slower. So it does have a small cost in efficiency.
That might be true, Jenny, but the neural benefits are huge. A famous study by Parker showed that bilinguals have much higher activity in 5 areas of the left hemisphere of the brain. Also, researcher Chrisman found that bilinguals have a better representation of sounds, meaning more efficient and flexible hearing. They even have more gray matter in areas used for talking fluently and processing sounds.
But we also have to consider how independent two languages are. And Uriel Weinrich described the three types of bilingual storage. The first coordinate bilinguals who learn language in different contexts, like home and school, and keep concepts separate. And sometimes they have a hard time translating words. The second is compute bilinguals, okay, who connect both language to the exact same concept. And the third, subordinate bilinguals, where the second language is weaker and always depends on the first language to be understood. And so, not all bilinguals have the same brain organization.
This is a very important point. Let's talk about the critical situation. What happens after brain damage or a traumatic injury?
When there is brain damage, the effects on language are unpredictable, and all hypotheses say that the last language learned is the first one to be lost. But Marrero explained that recovery depends on many factors like the age of acquisition, how they learned it, and which language they used the most before the accident. In fact, Christopher Almonte cited a famous study by Michel Paradis that identifies six different partners of recovery. One, parallel recovery, when both languages return at the same time. 2. Selective, when both could recover but only one does. 3. Differential, when one language recovers better than the other. 4. Antagonistic, when the language improves but the other goes backward. 5. Successive, when one language recovers only after the first one is completely restored. 6. And blend, which is a mix of patterns without control.
Wow, this is very complex. But Almonte's analysis also concludes something amazing. Bilingual English Spanish speakers actually have a higher probability of spontaneous language recovery compared to monolinguals. Also, reports from Medical News Today show that bilingual people, even if they cannot read or write, develop symptoms of dementia much later than monolinguals. So, despite the risk, the bilingual brain has a great advantage in protecting itself.
Thank you for sharing these fascinating facts. To finish our debate, Joanna, please give us the final conclusions.
Thank you, Karen. In conclusion, the test showed us that speaking two languages completely sculpts our mind. Even though infants face challenges in sorting out sounds and grammar as the unitary and dual theory show, our brain adapts beautifully through subsystem. Bilingualism might cause a tiny delay in speech rate sometimes, but the neural benefits are clear: more brain activity, more gray matter, and incredible protection against dementia and brain injuries. It is definitely a great asset for human connection. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, team. This concludes our academic debate. I really appreciate your attention. See you soon.